I was still a Marxist. I took a summer job in the government, got intern in economics, and it was seeing the government from the inside that turned me around. The vision of the left, and I think many conservatives underestimate this, is really a more attractive vision in itself. The only reason for not believing in it is that it doesn't work. But you don't see that at the outset. If all you're looking at is just a theory, if the world were the way the left conceives it to be, it would be a better world than the way the right conceives it to be. It just happens that the world is not that way.
But you're happier when you're not reading the news.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, you're also happier when you're working on a book.
Yes, when I can go out there and get the hard data and find out what's really happening.
Stupid people can create problems, but it often takes brilliant people to create a real catastrophe.
That is so, my gosh. Think of the catastrophes of the 20th century. You mentioned the genetic determinant. They drew the conclusion from their reasoning that you had to put an end to certain races because they had what they called eugenics, but what was later called genocide. And so that idea originated with the progressives. And there was a progressive who wrote a book with that theme, which was translated into German, and Hitler called it his Bible. During the 1920s, in reaction to World War I, which was so bad, the idea arose among the intellectual elites that the way to prevent war was to stop arming. You saw disarmament was the way to avoid a war. No evidence made the slightest impression on them, and they blundered the West into a war that probably would never have happened because the totalitarian dictatorships that started that war. Again, you have to take account of the ability of human beings to rationalize. Signed a negotiated agreement, and they love negotiated agreements. It doesn't matter what it says. So long as you sign it and you win the Nobel Prize, who cares if a few million people get killed in the aftermath?
Ladies and gentlemen, the Norwegian Nobel Committee has awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for 2019 to Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed.
What is happening right now in Tigray is unprecedented. There was an article in the National Geographic, of all places, that iconic magazine actually wrote a very chilling piece of what is happening there. And the title of their article was, I never knew hell until I saw it now, right? Referring to what a person said about what they saw in Tigray, right? So this is happening, and this is happening at the behest of somebody who was given the Nobel Peace Prize not too long ago, right? And the Nobel Peace Prize Committee really cannot stay in silence any longer. They cannot come out. They have to come up.
The committee has their hands are on those kids' blood.
I mean, that is an inevitable conclusion, Kamal, because their action was followed so soon by this devastating war in Tigray, Kamal. So they cannot escape that connection, Kamal. And if they have really any type of decency at this time is really to disassociate themselves from that institution so that institution can continue to do what Alfred Nobel wanted it to do back in autumn of 1895 when he wrote his will and left his, his wealth to serve humanity in some fashion. But what the Nobel Committee did Peace Committee did in 2019 is not serving humanity.
But what has happening in Tigray is the most deadly war. We complained rightly about what's happening in Ukraine, but what happened in Ethiopia is really awful. The figures that we have is that between 600,000 and 800,000 people being killed. Can you imagine? And most of them by famine, not fighting, but by famine, cutting humanitarian support, cutting electricity, cutting any kind of public services, and that for months and months. And I remember that this being done by a government which its president or prime minister is a Nobel Prize laureate.
Now, here we are, and the war in Tigray has been raging on for over a year. Does the committee now regret choosing Abiy Ahmed as a Nobel Peace Prize winner?
The committee stands behind the decision made in 2019 of rewarding the Peace Prize to Prime Minister Abiy, and on the basis, on the picture you painted so efficiently in your introduction. Since then, the situation has changed. There is a war in Ethiopia, and the Nobel laureate is very unprecedented participant in that war as a prime minister. And that is very unfortunate that the Peace Prize laureate is participating in a war, but we could not foresee this situation, and I would also like to underline that the situation in Ethiopia is very complex and complicated. What I can say is that the reasons we gave for the Peace Prize was also a great reformation of civil society and building civil society and enforcing democracy in Ethiopia and strengthening human rights. And Rome was never built overnight, but we emphasized these reasons when we awarded the prize. And I would also like to add that when we do make our decision, we are supported by consultants from international institutions and international universities. It is not only the subjective ideas of the members of the committee.
Okay, so there is a clearly a lengthy process in terms of choosing Abiy Ahmed or someone like Abiy Ahmed for this honor. The Nobel body just issued a very rare statement calling on Abiy Ahmed to end the war, saying that he has a very special responsibility to do so. What was interesting about the statement is that it came over a year after this war had actually started. Why did the body wait so long?
Well, first of all, we only emphasized that President Abiy Ahmed, not in his role as president, but in his role as a Peace Prize laureate, had an extra responsibility of contributing to peace.
Former Congressman Matt Gaetz threw out an interesting idea suggesting that if you were to broker a deal where nuclear inspectors go into both Israel and Iran, that you could win a Nobel Peace Prize, and they might even rename it the Trump Peace Prize. Did you hear those? What do you think of that?
Well, they should give me the Nobel Prize for Rwanda, and if you look the Congo, or you could say Serbia, Kosovo, you could say a lot of them. You could say, the big one is India and Pakistan. I should have gotten it 4 or 5 times. They should get it for the I would think the Abraham Accords would be a good one too.
But what do you
They
think of
won't
that
give me a
idea?
Nobel Peace Prize because they only give it to liberals. Doesn't mean a thing. I mean, I'm going to tell you about the Nobel Peace Prize. I'll tell you about that. I made a deal. I saved a country. And I just heard that the head of that country is now getting the Nobel Peace Prize for saving the country. I said, did I have something to do with it? Yeah. But you know, that's the way it is. As long as we know, that's all that matters, okay? That's all that matters. I saved a big war. Saved a couple of them.
To be honest, I don't have any clue about the criteria, how the Nobel Committee selects an individual for the prize. So the issue of President Trump must go to the Nobel Prize Committee. I'm not aware how they elect or select someone to provide the prize. And I'm not working for the prize. I'm working that peace is a very critical thing for our region. And if they recognize, and if President Trump complained, it must go to Oslo, not to Ethiopia. Thank you.
We are living in an evil, hypocritical, wicked, carnal, and primitive world. As you see, the international system established to prevent and prosecute genocide is fundamentally flawed, as its effectiveness is consistently undermined by political interests and selective enforcement, allowing states and actors to circumvent accountability with impunity. This wicked world likes to talk 24/7 about the fake Gaza genocide and turning a blind eye to the horrific global persecution and genocide of Christians to circumvent accountability for their diabolical actions. The current tragic war drama in the Middle East is another dishonest sophistic deflection from the ongoing ethnic cleansing and genocide in Armenia, Syria, Nigeria, Congo, and Ethiopia. As Congressman Brad Sherman rightfully put it, much of the world barely noticed the war that tore Ethiopia apart between 2020 and 2022, causing innumerable atrocities and millions of deaths of ancient Orthodox Christians, the guardians of the Ark of the Covenant. It featured rampages of murder and rape against civilians even deadlier than those Hamas perpetrated on October 7. It saw the bombing of cities, churches, monasteries, schools, hospitals, water infrastructure, flour mills, and the deliberate starving of civilians. Nobody is talking about this huge, probably world history-changing tragic event, because the CIA and company managed to keep that almost a secret for because it controls the Ethiopian elites. The CIA and company infiltrated nearly every level of the Ethiopian politics. Good-for-nothing African Union organized a conference on the Rwandan genocide in Addis Ababa, the city where genocide against Ethiopian Christians is taking place, but their hearts and attention were given to the non-African terrorists, the Arab Muslim Palestinians. Previously, the 2001 World Conference Against Racism, WCR, also known as Durban I, was held in Durban, South Africa. The focus was immediately diverted to the Middle East. The same is true today. Africans cannot talk about the genocide waged against their own people in Africa. Why? Because all the traitor African elites and those in power are agents of the Edomite and Ishmaelite Luciferians. In Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Congo, a genocide has been underway for years. Meanwhile, countries like South Africa led the charge in the International Court of Justice's genocide case against Israel, while it ignores a real genocide against Christians. The deadliest country no one wants to report truthfully about is Ethiopia. Since the beginning of the genocidal jihad in the northern Ethiopian regions of Tigray, Amhara, and Afar in November 2020 till today, 1.5 million Orthodox Christians were brutally massacred. 200,000 Orthodox Christian women, children, and nuns were raped and abused. Over 1 million Ethiopians were forced to migrate to other countries. 4.4 million internally displaced people severely impacted by conflict, hostilities, and climate shocks. Over 1 million female Ethiopian slaves sold to Arab countries. 20 million Ethiopian forced to experience food insecurity. By the fascist Oromo-Islamic Army of the Nobel Peace Laureate PM Abiy Ahmed Ali and his UN, Arab, Israeli, Turkish, Iranian, European, American, Russian, Ukrainian, African allies. The wars in Tigray, Ethiopia and Ukraine showed us. United by their Illuminist Luciferian Masonic Satanist agendas, the following Edomite Ishmaelite nations, entities, bodies and individuals are waging jihad against the ancient Christian nation of Aksumite Ethiopia, as they all actively and openly assist, empower and protect the genocidal fascist Oromo-Islamic regime of evil Abiy Ahmed Ali. The United Nations, the World Health Organization, Antonio Guterres, Tedros Adhanom, Klaus Schwab, the European Union, the African Union, the United States, Canada and Cuba, Presidents Biden and Trump, Russia, Ukraine, China, Israel, Iran, Arab States/Arab League/UAE, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Southern Ethiopians, Amharas, Oromos, Eritrea, Djibouti, Kenya, South Africa, Sudan, Somalia, Egypt, Iran, Pakistan, India, Azerbaijan, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, World Food Programme, 2020 Nobel Peace Laureate, the Nobel Prize Committee, the World Economic Forum, the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, the atheists and animists, the Muslims, the Protestants, the Sodomites, mainstream media, social medias like Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, TPLF, even those nations that are one another enemies, like Israel versus Iran, Russia plus China versus Ukraine plus the West, Egypt plus Sudan versus Iran plus Turkey, India versus Pakistan, have now become friends, as they are all united in the anti-Christian, anti-Zionist Ethiopia conspiracy. This has never ever happened before. It is a very curious phenomenon, a strange unique appearance in world history. With the Zionist Tigray Ethiopians are the Almighty Exeaber God and His saints, Saint Mary of Zion, the Ark of the Covenant,